So hello to you once again and welcome to our Sunday series. I usually wake up each morning to the Radio 4 news at 7 o'clock. And I am waiting for the day when the newscaster says, "Today we haven't got any news for you, but instead we're going to play you some soothing music." Now that day hasn't come yet. I hope that one day I'll live to see it. But by the time that we have listened to the effects of global warming, heard of the effects of the global pandemic, and then there's the fuel emergency and the shortage of delivery drivers and the party political conferences, some soothing music is just what we need, together with a couple of aspirin and a day in bed. But here's the Apostle Paul waking up in the morning and saying twice over to himself and to his readers, "We do not lose heart." This is in his second letter to the Corinthians. Well, how on earth does he do it? He's got three attitudes which nudge him in the right direction. The first is transparency. Because he's been living a transparent lifestyle, he knows that he's not going to get found out. It isn't because he's buried his secrets so deep that no one can find them, but because there are no secrets to find. I was really concerned a few weeks ago for Emma Raducanu when she won the US Open. Without doubt, there would have been unscrupulous journalists doing a trawl of her Instagram, Facebook, her Twitter feed and TikTok, as well as interviewing her friends from school to see what they could find out about her, looking for anything salacious that they could publish. But Paul says about himself that he has been living with complete openness day by day, and as a result he has absolute confidence that there was nothing for others to discover that they didn't already know about. More than that, he's entirely confident that if his teaching was fact-checked, those who did the research into what he had preached would find that he had told them the truth. It's said that the drugs which can be bought on the streets are likely to be only about 60% pure, because they've been cut with other powders. By contrast, Paul says that the gospel that he has preached was 100% pure. So he's not concerned if people check what he had taught them against the teachings of the Bible, because they were and are one and the same thing. His message was neither diluted nor polluted. So transparency. Secondly, clarity. One of the mantras politicians use frequently in their interviews is, "Let me be absolutely clear about this." The purpose of that introductory statement is to add emphasis and authority to what they are about to say. Paul is absolutely clear about what the purpose of his mission has been. In the ancient world, there were multiple issues that he could have addressed. Social ills, such as we have never seen. Degrading superstition. Slavery, which was endemic. Brutality with absolute power in the hands of the wealthy and the strong. Poverty, which was life-limiting, with life expectancy around 35 years of age because of infant mortality. Racism, for to be a Roman conferred distinction, whilst to be a Greek confirmed culture. Misogyny, with women considered to be the property of their husbands. Paul could have addressed any one of these social issues, but he narrowed down his focus. And he was clear about what it was. He said this: "We preach Jesus Christ as Lord. Paul has gone to the very heart of the matter, because anyone who submits to Jesus as Lord will begin to see the world through Jesus' eyes. By encouraging people to bow to Jesus as their Lord, he was directly influencing the great issues of his day. Superstition gives way before the lordship of Christ. It did then, and it has done since then. When we submit to the ownership of Christ, then no other ownership is of significance. This frees us. When we see how Jesus purchased his right of lordship over us by his cross, then instead of life being cheap, suddenly every life takes on supreme value. When we become a disciple of Jesus, materialism loses its grip on us. Generosity to the poor becomes a pattern of life. When we embrace the lordship of Christ, we simultaneously embrace every other person who has embraced Jesus, whatever their race, gender, or sexuality. There is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave, or free, but Christ is all and in all. The third nudge for the Apostle Paul was realism. Paul is realistic about himself. We have this treasure, he says, in jars of clay. Jars of clay, yes, they are fragile, functional, lowly, earthy, everyday, cheap, and with a limited lifespan. That's me, says Paul, a jar of clay, fragile and very easily broken. Lowly, there are millions of us. Earthy, created from the dust, and with a limited lifespan. We won't be here forever. That's me, says Paul. Well, if that is Paul's message to us, then it's worse than the BBC News at 7 o'clock. But he hasn't finished yet. He says that we Christian people have treasure within us. We are jars of clay, but there's treasure inside. The treasure of having been made in the image of God, even though that image has been spoiled. The treasure of knowing that we have been purchased by God at immense cost to himself. The treasure of having the living, risen Jesus living in us. So, says Paul, there are times when we are hard-pressed by our circumstances, but not crushed by them because we have Jesus. There's an inner resource which will not allow us to be entirely flattened. We may be perplexed, he says, and have so many questions to ask that we don't understand so much, but we're not in despair because we have Jesus. We may be at our wits' end, but not at our hopes' end. We may be being persecuted, he says, and feel completely alone, but in reality, we're not abandoned because we have Jesus. We may have been struck down with one reverse after another, but we've not been destroyed because we have Jesus. We've been knocked down, but not knocked out. In summary, says Paul, we carry around in our body the death of Jesus. Jesus told us very clearly that if we're going to be his disciples, then we need to take up our cross to follow him. The cross is the instrument on which people die. We are to die every day to ourselves. to our agenda, to our plans, to our desires, to our objectives, and live for him and for his agenda. And Paul was doing this. But do you know what makes Paul smile when he lives like this? Costly as it is. He knows the outcome. He knows the end of the story, the direction that this is taking him towards resurrection. Therefore, we do not lose heart, he writes. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. We do not lose heart. Transparency, clarity, and realism nudge him in the right direction. God bless you.